Belong, cried the categorizers. Don't sit on the walls or peep in through our lace-draped windows. Be Army or be Kamala, or better still be Madhavikutty. It is time to choose a name, a role, says Madhavikutty in her famous poem, An Introduction. She questioned and rejected belonging to a name, a role, a religion, a language all her life, even as she longed for it. This is Madhavikutty for us, a household name for Malayalis, and better known as Kamala Das for her English patrons and readers. Towards the end of the 20th century, after her conversion to Islam, she preferred to be known as Kamala Suraya. This is the poet that we are going to look at today, and we are going to learn a poem by her. Her literary work earned her a lot of recognition and won her numerous accolades. The Kerala Sahitya Academy Award, Vailar Award, Ezhuthachan Puraskaram, the Asian Poetry Award, etc. are some in the series of recognitions. Kamala Das was also nominated for the prestigious Nobel Prize in the year 1984. This bilingual writer, with her impeccable skill and command over English and Malayalam, has contributed significantly to the Indian English literature and Malayalam literature. Kamala was born into a conservative Hindu family with a rich social and literary lineage on the 31st of March 1934 to Nalapat Balamani Amma, a renowned Malayalam poet, and Mr. V.M. Nair, an ex-managing editor of the widely distributed Malayalam daily Madhrubhumi. She was born on the 31st of March 1934. Her childhood was divided between Calcutta, where her father worked, and Malabar or Punniyurkulam, to be more specific, which was the place of her maternal ancestral home, that is the Nalapat family. This aspect of her life is relevant to us as the poem that we are going to discuss today is entitled My Grandmother's House, where she is reminiscing about her grandmother, about her maternal house, and the unadulterated, unconditional love that she received there as a child. My Grandmother's House appeared in her maiden collection of poems entitled Summer in Calcutta, which was published in the year 1965. Many of her poems in English are about the warmth of childhood and her ancestral home, her maternal ancestral home in Punniyurkulam. This nostalgia is a theme that recurs in her poetry. Through her poems, she also tried to be the voice or to give voice to a generation of women who were confined to their household responsibilities and considered a commodity to be exchanged in marriage. She portrayed the women in her works as human beings with desires, emotions, and the feelings of pain and happiness like any men. This blatant and candid portrayal of the sexual desires and sexuality of women made her an iconoclast of her generation. She is a fiercely feminist writer. Being the fiercely feminist writer, her poems are subjective in nature and have elements of her autobiography in them. She was one of the confessional poets like Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton and many others. We will come back to this term confessional poet after discussing the poem. She's a confessional poet. Before going into an analysis of the poem, we listen to the poem. It's a beautiful poem which is very warm and we can feel the poem as we read it. I hope you will enjoy the reading of the poem. My Grandmother's House by Kamala Das. There is a house now far away where once I received love. There is a house now far away where I received love. That woman died. The house withdrew into silence. Snakes moved among books. I wasn't too young to read, and my blood turned cold like the moon. How often I think of going there to peer through blind eyes of windows or just listen to the frozen air. Or in wild despair, pick an armful of darkness to bring it here to lie behind my bedroom door like a brooding dog. You cannot believe, darling, can you, that I lived in such a house and was proud and loved. I, who have lost my way and beg now at strangers' doors to receive love, at least in small change. This poem, My Grandmother's House, is a nostalgic revisit of her grandmother's house in her memory. As the first line suggests, there is a house now far away. She lives far from her grandmother's house right now. Kamala Das was married at the young age of 15 and she is reminiscing her early childhood days which she spent in Nalapat, and she has very good memories about the place. She was loved there, she was cared for there, and she has a different life now. And while she is living a different life now, she is resorting to her memories in her grandmother's house. She is cherishing those and she is finding comfort in those memories. So she is far away from that house now where she once received love, and that woman died. That woman here is a reference to her grandmother who was the soul of that house. So she died, she is no more there, and with her death, the house withdrew into silence. She was the soul of the house, she was the one who kept it alive. It was a home when her grandmother was alive, filled with love and warmth, and after her death, the house is withdrawn into silence, and snakes are moving among books. This shows that no one lives there now, and the animals or the wild is encroaching the house as it is of no other use. So the house is withdrawn into silence after her grandmother's death, and the snakes are moving among books. And I was then too young to read. This is a continuation of the reference to the book that we listened to earlier. When she was living with her grandmother in her early childhood days, she was too young to read. We said that she was married at the age of 15. So when she lived there, she was too young to read. And my blood turned cold like moon. Her blood turns cold like moon because of the haunting darkness of the house. The house is dark now with nobody living there, and this darkness is turning her blood cold. And like the cold moon, I would also like to add something here, that the temperature of the moon is dependent on its proximity to the sun, and so it has extreme heat or extreme cold in moon. So here it is talked about the extreme cold moon, and she is falling in love with the darkness surrounding her grandmother's house. She's falling in love with this darkness, and she prefers this darkness to the light that she lives now, and she is happy about it. She prefers that, yet she is unable to embrace it completely. I was then too young to read, and my blood turned cold like the moon. How often I think of going there. Going there is a happy thing for her, so she wants to go there very often. We do not know whether that is physically possible or not, but she is going there in her memories many a times. How often I think of going there to peer through blind eyes of windows or just listen to the frozen air. The image, the blind eyes of windows and the frozen air signifies the calmness there, there is nothing happening there. The blind eye of the windows, because it is all dark inside, so we cannot see anything, and it has been long since the windows are opened, since there is nobody living there. So she just wants to peer through the blind eyes of the windows, and she just wants to listen to the frozen air. The air is frozen or dead and not alive and warm as it was before when people lived there. It is frozen and it is not warm right now because the windows are closed and there is not much of movement of the air that is happening. So it is frozen and the windows are blind. So she wants to peer through the blind eyes of windows and listen to the frozen air. She can listen to even to the frozen air in her grandmother's house. She can feel it. She is very close to the place that she knows everything, or she can feel everything about the place. She can even listen to the air there. Or in wild despair, pick an armful of darkness to bring it here to lie behind my bedroom door like a brooding dog. There is this reference to an armful of darkness, which means that it is available there in abundance, and in her despair that she is in right now, she wants to pick the darkness there. Even that is very precious to her. She wants to pick an armful of darkness from her grandmother's house and to bring it here to lie behind her bedroom door like a brooding dog. She compares this darkness to a dog, which suggests that it is loyal to her like a pet dog. It will be loyal to her like a pet dog. The memories can definitely comfort her, can give her some good time like a pet dog. So she wants to bring it here. She is taking the darkness from her grandmother's place in her mind, and she is keeping it safe within her so that it comforts her in her present life, which is full of despair. You cannot believe, darling, can you? So this is a direct addressal to a person whom she calls darling. She asks the person that he or she cannot believe something. So what is it that she is asking? That I lived in such a house and was proud and loved. The person that she is right now is a different version, and this person next to her, she is asking him or her whether they can believe that she had such a beautiful childhood where she was loved unconditionally and immensely cared for. You cannot believe, darling, can you, that I lived in such a house and was proud and loved. I who have lost my way, that though she had such a beautiful childhood filled with love and warmth and such beautiful memories, the life that she is in right now is not so. She has lost her way and she is now begging at strangers' doors to receive love. She knows that she might not be receiving them in the unconditional, unadulterated way that she received it during her childhood in her grandmother's place, but she is begging for it at least in small change, at least in small quantities, a bit of it, a tiny bit of it. She is longing for that love. So with this longing for love in her, she is resorting to the good memories that she had in her grandmother's place to find comfort. She finds comfort in the memories in her, she finds comfort from the memories of her early childhood that she spent in her grandmother's house. Though short, the poem wraps in itself an intriguing sense of nostalgia and uprootedness. She is seeking solace in the warmth of the past memories, which is free from the hypocrisies of the present. So this poem, My Grandmother's House, is a very short and sweet poem which goes straight into our heart like many other poems of Madhavikutty. When we look at the structure of the poem, it is a very simple 16-line poem with no definite pattern of rhyme. It's a 16-line poem with no definite pattern of rhyme. And the tone of the poem is melancholic. The mood of nostalgia and melancholy dominate the overall atmosphere of the poem. The images that are used in the poem, that is the snakes moving among the books, the blind eye of the windows, and the frozen air intensifies the feelings of nostalgia and longing for love that the poet is trying to convey to us. The feeling of nostalgia and longing for love. So now we are going back to this term that we mentioned before, confessional poetry. So this poem is a confessional poem, and confessional poetry is the poetry of the personal or I. Confessional poetry is personal poetry. That is to say, in layman's terms, in a confessional poem, a poet talks about his or her own life. The I in a confessional poem is a direct reference to the poet himself or herself. And now, without further explanation, we can understand why this poem, My Grandmother's House by Kamala Das, is a confessional poem. There is a house now far away where I once received love, and this I here refers to Kamala Das herself, and the house here mentioned is her ancestral home in Nalapad, and all the details that are given here are very closely associated with her personal life. And most of her works are confessional in nature, and that makes us associate more with the poem. Since she is a Malayali woman and we are very familiar with the aspects of society and life that she talks about, we can connect with her. Probably that is one reason why we are able to feel the poem. So to sum up, this is a beautiful poem that encapsulates many of the recurring poignant themes in her works. I hope you will enjoy reading the poem. Thank you.